প্রভাত ফেরি আমায় নেবে সঙ্গে বাংলা আমার বচন আমি জন্মেছি এই বঙ্গে Hello everyone, I'm Sami Hossain Chishti, Director of Free Linguistic Conference and the coordinator of this credible project, and also the Bangla translator of the book The Ribbit-Ribbit Pond. I welcome you all to our today's book launching ceremony and also the celebration of International Mother Language Day. There is a reason why we decided to arrange this program on this day because the Ribbit-Ribbit Pond, being a multilingual illustrated book for children, has 27 translations, and we hope to get more in future. People from so many countries, from so many languages can read this book and feel the sense of harmony, and they can also take pride in their mother tongue. So before we begin, I would like to share a few words about the significance of this day. As you know, I'm from Bangladesh, and this movement, the language movement of 1952, it took place in Bangladesh. So I would like to say a few words about the significance of this day. So, 21st February was declared to be the International Mother Language Day by UNESCO in 1999, and it has been observed throughout the world since 21st February of 2000, and the declaration came up as a tribute to the language movement of 1952 that was done by the Bangladeshis. Today, we proudly remember the sacrifices of all the language martyrs and all the language heroes of the language movement. As a Bangladeshi and a son of a freedom fighter of 1971, I feel privileged and honored to be a part of this program with all of you and also to host the program, which is a carnival of languages, the way I see it. So you might not know that there is a popular song composed to celebrate this day in Bangladesh, and the song is in Bangla, and that we sing on this very day on 21st February, and it says, "Amar bhayer rokte rangano 21শে ফেব্রুয়ারি আমি কি ভুলিতে পারি ছেলে হারা শত মায়ের অশ্রু গড়ায়ে ফেব্রুয়ারি আমি কি ভুলিতে পারি." I'm not going to translate it, but I can tell you the gist that the song says, how could we forget the day that is colored by the blood of our brothers and flooded by the tears of the mothers who have lost their sons. So this is the gist of the song that celebrates the hero and their heroic sacrifices. So I think this is a day that promotes multilingualism and teaches us to respect every languages in this world. And most importantly, it reminds us to perform the duties that we have towards our mother tongue. So, and with these words, I would like to move on to the next segment. I would like to briefly introduce the project and then the project team to all of you. So I've already mentioned that the Ribbit-Ribbit Pond is a part of a credible project. And later in this session, you will get to know more about this book and its aims and what makes me think that it is a credible project. This book was initially written in Spanish and English by Ivan Gonzalez as a part of his postgraduate studies in cross-cultural and applied linguistics at University of Sydney under the supervision of Professor Dr. Amar Mahbub. We then invited colleagues to provide additional translations and worked with a team of technical experts to turn this book into a multilingual ebook. So when we talk about the team, so allow me to introduce the team who really worked hard for this project. So first of all, I would like to mention the name of our project supervisor, Professor Dr. Amar Mahbub, who supervised the entire project and who is also the editor of the book. And let me be honest that without his help, we would not be able to make it happen today. Then I would like to mention the name of the author, which is Ivan Gonzalez, who wrote the original version in Spanish and also in English and provided us with an opportunity to translate this book, So he's a key figure in this entire project. I would also like to mention the name of our project advisor and also the publication manager of FLC, Leslie Barat, who helped us and guided us a lot. And I also want to mention the name of our technical expert, our technical in charge, Michel Needham, who worked really hard for this book. And we have our illustrator, Garin Adisa Sonko, who has done a brilliant job that I want to say. And last of all, there is myself, Sami Hossain Chishti. I was the coordinator of the project, and I can't express how happy I am to be a part of it and how much I enjoyed coordinating with everyone and producing this multilingual ebook. So let us not forget the translators, because I think the main part of this book is its translations. It's a multilingual book. So I would like to take a couple of minutes from you. Please bear with me. I would like to read out the names of the translators and the available translations that we have currently. And please bear with me for 2 minutes. So I'm reading the list, and I beg your pardon if I unintentionally mispronounce someone's name. Please forgive me. So the languages that we have and the translations that translators who did the translations are the Spanish and English. These were done by Ivan Para Gonzalez. The Bangla translation was done by Sami Hossain Chishti, and Torwali by Zubair Torwali. Urdu, Hafiz Noman Ahmed. He also did the Punjabi translation. Sindhi translation was done by Khumbar Hamid. Thai, Napak on Srita Karn. Serbian, Croatian, and Montenegrin was done by Milicia Vukadin. Indonesian was done by Yusuf Al-Arif. Tagalog, Mona Lisa Hernandez Mamak. Danish, Bettina Butch. Sautali, Samuel Hasda. Chinese, Barry Chen. Tamil, Lalita Raja. Greek, Marcela Gogos. Arabic, Diala Ibrahim. Yoruba, Joseph Ozoba. Vietnamese, Nguyen Thi Phuong Duan. Dutch, John van Dizek. Macedonian, Natalisa Krasteva. Malay, Chiu Shin Wai. Turkish, Hussein Amar Nasli. Burmese, Thiri Kwao. Hindi, Priti Tiwari. Khmer, Hongle Le. So once again, I beg your pardon if I have mispronounced someone's name. If it happened, it was quite unintentional. So I think now we should move on to the main part of today's program, which is the taking a look at the book. So we have pre-recorded the reading of the book, and I would like to share the screen and allow you to take a look at the book and the reading of the book. So you can, one thing I want to mention, that you can go to the website and read it by yourself. You can pick any combinations of language that are available in the list, but for the time being, just for now, we'll be sharing the screen and playing a recorded version of the reading, which was recorded in 4 different languages, including Spanish, Vietnamese, Hindi, and Bangla. So allow me to share the screen.
The Ribbit-Ribbit Pond, El Estanque Ribbit-Ribbit. The author of this book is Ivan Parra Gonzalez, the editor is Amar Mahbub, and the illustrator is Karin Adi Sasonko. La primavera anterior, un grupo de ranas Croac-Croac llegó al estanque Ribbit-Ribbit. Last spring, a group of Croac-Croac frogs arrived at the Ribbit-Ribbit Pond. Vinieron de una tierra muy lejana, más allá de las montañas. They came from a faraway land, from the mountains and beyond. Viajaron de día, they traveled day. Viajaron de noche, they traveled night. Bajo la lluvia, in the rain. Bajo el sol, in the sun. Hasta que finalmente encontraron un nuevo hogar en el estanque Ribbit-Ribbit, until they finally found a new home at the Ribbit-Ribbit Pond. No pude evitar percatarme de que las ranas recién llegadas eran diferentes. I could not help but notice that the newcomers were different. Algunas de ellas eran más oscuras. Some of them were darker.
Một số bạn trắng hơn. Some of them were lighter. Rất nhiều bạn to hơn. Many of them were bigger. Hài hước, vui nhộn hơn. And the way they spoke was funnier. Vì thế, tôi ngại ngùng sợ sệt gặp Croac-Croac bên hồ. So I was a little scared to meet the Croac-Croac frogs in the water. Chợt một ngày bạn đến, Croac-Croac và chúng tôi cùng tung tăng vui đùa. But one day, a few Croac-Croac frogs came and played with us in the pond. Từ đó tôi nhận ra chúng tôi đều giống nhau. And then I realized that we are quite alike after all. Có thể nhảy rất cao. We can all jump very high.
हम सभी अत्यधिक तीव्रता से तैर सकते हैं. We all can swim very fast. हम सभी अत्यधिक तीव्र स्वर में गा सकते हैं. We all can sing very loud. हम सभी को फूलों की सुगंध से प्रेम है. We all love the smell of flowers. तथा निसंदेह हम सभी को एक समान अपनी अपनी देह को ठिठुरती सर्दियों में धूप ताप कर गर्म रखना पसंद है. And we all like to keep our bodies warm in the cold winters. हम सभी को सूर्योदय प्यारा है. We all love the sunrise. हम सभी को सूर्यास्त प्यारा है. We all love the sunset.
এবং আমরা সবাই একই রকমের পতঙ্গ খেতে উপভোগ করি. And we all enjoy the same insects. আমার নতুন বন্ধুরা এখন রিবিট ডাকতে পারে, আর রিবিট ব্যাঙেরা এখন ক্রোক ডাকতে পারে. My new friends can now say ribbit, and the ribbit frogs can now say crow. আমার এখন আরো অনেক বন্ধু আছে. I now have many more friends. এবং বাকি ব্যাঙদেরও, and the other frogs too. ক্রোক ব্যাঙদের এই পুকুরটিকে নিজেদের ঘর বানাতে দেখে আমি অনেক আনন্দিত. I'm happy to see the Croac-Croac frogs making this pond their new home. Ribbit পুকুরে সকল ব্যাঙদের স্বাগতম. All frogs are welcome at the Ribbit Pond. The end. সমাপ্ত. So I think you all enjoyed the reading, right? So yeah, thank you for your appreciation. I hope you enjoyed. So now that we have read, we have watched the recording of the reading of the book, we'd also like to hear something from the author of the book. We would like to hear something from Ivan Gonzalez, who is the author of the book, and who will be delivering a brief presentation on this book. So Ivan, the floor is yours. Please take over.
Okay. Thank you, Sami. I'm just going to share my screen now. Okay, can you all see this presentation?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, so yeah, we'll just briefly talk about the book, just for you to know a little bit more about the project. As you know, the book is named The Ribbit-Ribbit Pond, and it was part of my dissertation for my master's degree in cross-cultural and applied linguistics, and Amar was my supervisor. And I just want to talk about the motivations behind this project, because well, as you saw, the Ribbit-Ribbit Pond is tackling the issue of immigration, which is a big issue in many countries. So my motivation really behind this project was basically because I'm from Chile, which is a country where we don't really have many immigrants. Immigration is kind of a new phenomenon, really. So when people have, like in the last, I would say 5 years, we started to receive like many immigrants from countries where their first language was not Spanish. So when people started to arrive into the country, a lot of people really were not prepared for that. So there have been like a lot of miscommunication issues, and a lot of people have been discriminated against because, as I said, Chileans are not really prepared for, in my opinion, we were not really prepared for that, because no one really teaches you, like in school, for example, how to, interact with people from different cultures. So yeah, basically my motivation was to create a tool that people, to create a better attitude towards immigration, because it's something that we as a society need in Chile. So as I said, basically my goal in this project was to promote a positive attitude in children towards immigration and the multilingual practices that immigration generates. And why children? Well, basically because I'm a teacher, and I think that it's very important that we foster this a positive attitude towards immigration from a very early age, so that when people are adults, of course, they're going to be prepared to deal, to be multilingual speakers. Well, not multilingual speakers really, but they're going to be competent in, intercultural. They're going to be intercultural communicators. That's basically the idea behind this. And in order to do that, in order to promote a positive attitude towards immigration, I focused on three main let's say components of attitudes. First, I focused on openness towards a new culture, also on respect towards another culture, and curiosity and discovery, which these three aspects of attitude are the ideas that these will be the foundations for the development of intercultural competence in the future in children. So I'm just going to talk briefly about my expectations with this project. First of all, my expectation was to reach a broad audience. That's why I decided not just to write the book in English, but also use Spanish, which is these are the two languages that I'm competent at. But then, of course, we thought about doing a multilingual project, but it was a little bit difficult because you always have limited time when you're studying at university. So now that a lot of people are involved and they were able to translate the book into other languages, and I'm really, really happy with that because we're actually achieving this goal that we had in mind from the beginning. Also, the second expectation that I had when I started this was to teach children not to be afraid of living in a multicultural and multilingual world. And basically that's going to lead them to become intercultural, communicative, people who are competent in intercultural communication. And finally, the bilingual design of the book also provides language teachers, especially teachers of English as a foreign language, with a resource that has been explicitly designed for the development of intercultural competence, which is something that is not very common really, which is weird, I think, as a language teacher. If I try to find some sort of resource to promote or to teach intercultural communicative competence to my students, it's kind of difficult to find those type of resources. And this book in particular attends to the principles of translanguaging, which basically tells us that we as human beings have a linguistic repertoire. So that's why I didn't really want to focus only on English in the book. I thought, okay, my students in Chile, they speak Spanish, and I wanted to speak English. I don't want it to be just monolingual speakers of English. I wanted to be multilingual speakers. So why not use both languages in the book? And that's the idea also behind having so many translations of the book. And now I will just briefly speak about how to use this book in the classroom, but more specifically in the EFL classroom, in the English classroom, because that's my area of expertise really, and that's the classroom that I had in mind when I wrote the book. So in the EFL classroom, basically we tackled two main components. We usually, in any class, we always talk about grammar and vocabulary. So I will just focus now on how these two components can be explored in the book. So first,
sorry, Ivan, sorry to interrupt you. Your PowerPoint is not moving with your speech. So I think you need to move the slides for us.
Oh, really?
Yes, you have to maximize it and then move the slides.
Oh yeah, I've been moving them. I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, if you maximize it and move it, it will be clear. It's not happening here. Thanks. Go to the display. Yeah, do the presentation mode, and then in the presentation mode. Yeah.
Okay, is it moving now?
No, it's presentation mode is not, you're still not in the presentation mode.
Oh, really?
No.
Ivan, you can press slideshow F5 so that we can see the full screen and it will be in the presentation mode.
Yes.
Okay, let me just share it again. I'm just going to share it again. Okay, so yeah, can you see the slides moving now?
No, we still don't. We still just see your original PowerPoint presentation. So, you know, at the bottom of your screen, do you see that, you know, that number 55%? Just next to that 55%, there's a little icon. Press that icon.
Sorry.
No, down, down. Move your cursor down. See 55 at the bottom. Yeah,
Yeah.
next to it. Next to it. Yeah, this one.
Yeah, this one.
Yes.
Oh yeah, this is the one that
Yeah.
I've been pressing.
It's not moving. I guess you'll have to just move it here manually, just the way you're doing it now. Just make sure that it's moving. I think you can turn off the presentation mode and just share the screen this way. It seems not to be working the other way.
Okay, you can do it.
I
like
don't
that.
think it works when it's in presentation mode. I think you have to take it out and then click it and then put it back in share screen. When you're sharing the screen, I don't think you can click it.
Yeah, but for now, just move it every screen so that we're sure. Yeah, sorry about that.
Yes, we can just do it like this.
Yes, that's fine. Sorry.
Sorry about that. Okay, so yes, I said I'm just going to talk about now how vocabulary and grammar can be explored in the book. So first, I will talk about the vocabulary in the book. As you must have seen, the book deals with a lot of different entities that teachers can take advantage of. So for example, of course, we talk about frogs. And we've got two types of frogs, the Croac-Croac frogs and the Ribbit-Ribbit frogs. So I believe that this gives the teachers the opportunity to explore the differences in onomatopoeic words in English and Spanish, and in terms of like the sounds that animals make, in this case frogs, but of course this could be just used as an introduction by teachers to talk about other animals and other differences in onomatopoeic words. And well, as I said, the teaching of these words implies the teaching of the names of other animals in English and other than frogs. Then in the book, we also talk about places, specifically ponds. So of course, we talk about the Ribbit-Ribbit Pond, and the fact that there's a Ribbit-Ribbit Pond implies that there exist other ponds as well. So this could be taken by teachers as well, and they could use this to explore the relationship between different countries and different languages. Like at the Ribbit-Ribbit Pond, the frogs basically say Ribbit-Ribbit, whereas for example at the Croac-Croac Pond, the frogs will probably just say Croac-Croac, and in a different pond, the frogs will say other things. So yeah, as I said, this gives the opportunity to explore the differences. Sorry, the vocabulary in English relate. Yeah, the relationship between countries and different languages. Then the book also talks about different seasons of the year, specifically spring and winter. But then, of course, there are two other seasons, and this also gives the opportunity for teachers to explore these seasons with the students. And in terms of times of the day as well and weather conditions, the book also mentions day and night or rain and sun. But the teachers, of course, can expand these, and they can include other times of the day like afternoon, evening, morning, night, and also other vocabulary items related to weather conditions such as rainy, sunny, cloudy, among other words. And also when the main character describes the new frogs, he also says, for example, the Croac-Croac are darker, or some of them are lighter, some of them are bigger. So that's also an opportunity for teachers to talk about physical characteristics and teach children different adjectives to describe people. And well, yeah, basically that's in terms of vocabulary, in terms of that's what I could identify in my book. But then not just, I don't really discuss only entities. I also used a lot of different verbs. Like for example, here, this is an extract from the resolution stage from my book. It's when the character finds a solution to the problem. It's when the character realizes that all frogs are equal, really, and they're very similar. So when they say, for example, we all can jump very high, we all can swim very fast. Here I'm using different action verbs, which are very common in an EFL classroom with young learners. I try to use like very basic verbs, really, because it needs to be something that is suitable for young learners. And I believe that these type of verbs like jump, swim, sing, they're very appropriate for young learners, really. And also this stage in particular includes verbs to express feelings like love or enjoy, which are also verbs that you usually find in an EFL classroom with young learners. Well, that's about vocabulary. Now with grammar, the book is of course a narrative, so you can find a lot of verbs in the past. But I'm not really going to discuss that much here because, as I said, the book is intended for young learners. In that context, really, we EFL teachers, we don't really teach young learners how to, construct sentences in the past tense very often. But of course, depending on the level of English of the students, you could easily take this book and maybe work with older students and use it as an introduction to, past tense. But other opportunities that this book gives, for example, you can find this in the complication stage of the book, which is where the main character presents the problem in the story. And the problem is basically that he thinks that there's a big difference between the Croac-Croac frogs and the Ribbit-Ribbit frogs. And in this stage, we can find, for example, quantifiers in the sentence. For example, some of them were darker, or some of them were lighter, many of them were bigger. So these 3 words could easily be taught to students. And same thing with adjectives. We can also find comparative forms of adjectives when we say darker, lighter, bigger, or the way they spoke was funnier. So this is also, this could be a good introduction for teachers to teach adjectives and how to compare things. Then again, going back to the resolution stage, we can also we talk here about abilities, which is something that young learners also talk about in an EFL classroom. So you can easily teach them how to use the modal verb can, for example. And also, you can also teach them how to use verbs to express general likes and dislikes or preferences, like when you say, I love the sunrise, or I love the sunset, or we enjoy eating the same insects. This extract gives you the opportunity to teach children that, for example, after the word love, you can use a noun, or you can also use a verb ending in the ing form. So yeah, I think this part of the book gives a good opportunity for teachers to start exploring that with students. Okay, and as I said, we usually just, in any EFL classroom, we focus always on vocabulary and grammar. But of course, the intention of this book is also to develop their intercultural communicative competences of students. So I will just briefly talk about how I intended to do this with my project. And the way I did this was through a series of questions at the end of the book that were targeting the different attitudes that children can have towards immigration. Where here you can see the questions in a more clear way. And because my intention was to build a positive attitude towards immigration, what I did was divide attitude into 3 different components based on the theories that have been developed in systemic functional linguistics. So I created this series of questions focusing on affect, which is basically how people feel about things. Appreciation, which is basically on how people value things. In this case, my question targeting appreciation was focused on immigration. Here I wanted to know if for children, was the arrival of the Croac-Croac bad in the end? So yeah, as you will see, the questions per se are very simple because well, as I said, it's for young learners who don't really speak English. So that's why the answers may be a little bit contrived. And the same thing with the other type of attitude that I want to target. I also, when we talk about judgment, we talk about like the evaluation that you have of other people's characters. So in this type of questions, I wanted to focus on the frogs and immigrants in particular with my questions. And yeah, now by building these questions around the different types of attitudes, my idea was to promote a kind of a reflection on immigration and the impact that immigration has on students' lives. But of course, as I said, these questions they might seem a little bit simple, but it's because they are like thought based on my context, based on students who don't really speak English and they're very young learners. But of course, teachers are more than welcome to create their own questions and go beyond these. The idea is, of course, just to generate a discussion about immigration, but you can always go beyond what is presented here. And yeah, basically this is the end of my presentation. Thank you very much for listening. I hope you've enjoyed what I've just talked about.
Thank you, Ivan, for your wonderful presentation. So we really enjoyed your presentation, and it really helped us understand the concept of the book and the message that you wanted to deliver and how we can use it in EFL classrooms. So now I would like to deliver a talk on the credible aspect of this book, and I would like to review this book from the credible approach. That's what I'll try to do in a very brief presentation. But I want to say that as a host, I'm not supposed to speak that much, but considering the request of my team, I'll be delivering a very brief presentation. But before I do that, I want to say something that even I was not quite familiar with the concept of credible approach, right? Or credible approach to teaching, credible approach to research, or credible project. Then I met this guy, Professor Dr. Amar Mahbub, and I completed a course which he taught at FLC and came to know about these things. And afterwards, I did a credible project at my university where I teach at Nottingham University, Bangladesh. And I supervised a project that was a credible project. It was on spotting fake news. And my students, they did a wonderful job. It was a series project with 3 different batches, and they brilliantly spotted and debunked some popular national and international fake news, and it generated a positive vibe in my community, especially on social media. And I would like to mention that some national TV commercials were inspired by this project. So I feel really privileged and proud to be a practitioner of credible approach of teaching and research. So after this teaser, I would like to deliver this presentation. And don't worry, it's going to be brief. So allow me to share the screen. So there we go. Just give me a moment. Yeah. So can you see this slides? I think you can, right? Okay, so this talk is about basically what makes me think the Ribbit-Ribbit Pond to be a credible project. So I'll be talking about what is a credible project and what makes me think that this book, the Ribbit-Ribbit Pond, can be an excellent example of a credible project. That's what I'm going to talk about today. So before I do that, I want to do that acknowledgement. This presentation has taken ideas from the works of Professor Amar Mahbub that he did on credible approach to teaching and research. So I'm very much influenced by his ideas, and this presentation is really influenced by some of the writings of Dr. Amar Mahbub. So there we go. So what is a credible project? Some of you may not be familiar with credible project. So let me talk about it. So a credible project, as you can see on the screen, is the result of a very particular approach to doing research known as the credible approach. So the thing is, the credible project is the outcome and the credible approach is the process or the cause. So if you know what is credible approach, then you can know what is credible project. When you use credible approach and make something happen, then it can be called a credible project. So first of all, we need to know what is a credible approach or what we understand by the term credible approach. So before I define credible approach, let me say one thing, that credible approach enables and supports practices that bring harmony and prosperity to a community. And you can focus that we're putting a lot of stress on practices. Instead of theories, we're focusing on practices because credible approach believes in actions, not in talking, right? We believe in doing, not in talking. So instead of writing papers, giving theories, making suggestions, collecting data, what we believe in bringing visible changes in our society and empowering our community by doing things, right? By doing things in our own way for our own benefit. So that's what we do in a credible project, and that's what credible approach is all about. And it focuses on the prosperity and the empowerment of a target community. So the word credible is an acronym, right? Do not go for the denotation of the word credible. You can see all caps, so that means it's an acronym. So which means that each letter in the word stands for a different word. In this case, each of the letters in this acronym represents a feature that a credible project needs to have so that it is significant and effective. So I'll be moving on to the next slide that basically talks about which letter stands for what and what we understand by these terms and how this book is a credible project. So this is the slide that will make things clear, I think. So as we can see, a credible approach and the Ribbit-Ribbit Pond. So first of all, you can see the C of the credible stands for contextually relevant. The C of the word credible stands for contextually relevant. When we say contextually relevant, we mean to think locally, right? We mean to think locally. Now take a look at the book, The Ribbit-Ribbit Pond. It addresses issues like immigration and refugee, right? So and the author, he has first-hand experience of it, right? As he belongs to Chile, right? So you may have read some of his works. So I've gone through his works. So I can say that he's from Chile and he has first-hand experience of the issues like that. Even I have first-hand experience of issues like that, and I'll share these things with you in a moment. So it addresses issues like immigrant and refugees, right? So for example, in the Western part of the world, the number of immigrants are rising day by day. And the native students, when they go to schools, they meet new friends, new classmates who are actually immigrants. So in order to learn how to interact with them, how to communicate with them, how to build an intercultural communication, they need to have a positive attitude and proper knowledge about these things. And this is what this book is going to teach us. Remember one thing, whenever the issue of immigration comes, what happens? It creates mutual fear, right? The natives, they feel threatened by sometimes they feel threatened by the presence of the immigrants. They fear them because they consider them to be a threat, which is a negative attitude that our book tries to overcome, right? And on the other hand, you can see that the immigrants, they also go through the fear of rejection. They feel like that they will not be included, they will be excluded. So they also go through the fear of rejection. So this book teaches us not to go through this sort of fear. Rather, we can come up with a positive attitude. right? So it also addresses issues like refugee, and I'm from Bangladesh, and I can connect with it, right? So in 1971, people of my country, people of Bangladesh, they took refuge in India during the Liberation War in 1971, and currently, you know that the refugees of Myanmar, people who are addressed as Rohingya, they are taking refuge in my country, in Bangladesh. So I also have experience of these things. So what happens that the natives, they sometimes, with a prejudice in their mind, consider the refugee to be a burden on their shoulders, on their country. On the other hand, the refugee, they think that they are always unwanted. So this sort of negative vibes should be reduced, and this can be done by a credible project like a book, the Ribbit-Ribbit Pond, right? There's a term that says catch them young. When if we can train the children in thinking with a positive attitude, building their intercultural communicative competence, and they will grow up as adults who will not have this prejudice, right? So then we can move on to the next point, that response to practical needs. And here the R of the credible R stands for response to practical needs. When we say response to practical needs, we mean to say not driven by theory. We mean to say not driven by theory, rather addressing on the practical need. So you can see that this book can serve as a resource of intercultural communication. Unfortunately, in EFL classroom, we do not have adequate resources that can help develop intercultural communicative competence. But this book can serve this purpose. This book can train our children and the young learners to develop intercultural communication competence. And this book can serve as a resource in this context. And then we can, I want to be brief. I don't want to elaborate my talk. There are other people who would love to talk. So I want to be brief. So we can move on to the next topic, that is engage stakeholders, right? So when we say engage stakeholders, we mean not just collecting data. In today's academia, we have a tendency that we rely too much on references, on data, right? And this practice is nothing new. It comes even from the time of Socrates, that we have the tendency to privilege one thing over the other. Speech over writing, masculinity over femininity, reason over emotion, which Jacques Derrida later on tried to deconstruct. That he said that this should not be our attitude, right? We can also give some privilege to other ideas that we consider to be inferior. There cannot be, and there should not be, any sort of hierarchy. So in research, in teaching, it is not necessary that we should always focus on references and data. And let me tell one thing that I learned from Dr. Mahbub, that references should not be taken, or should not always be taken for granted. These are not something that we can say gospel truth, right? So we should rather focus on our needs and engage the stakeholders. For this book, what was more important than data collection was illustration. And for this illustration, our author, he availed the best illustrator that was available. And you see, we believe in the rhetoric of the message. The images, the illustration of this book delivers the message way better than words. So for example, sometimes music can speak better than words. I can read out an elegy and you cannot even feel sad. You may not even feel sad. But if I can successfully play a sad tune in my violin, then it can even make you cry. So the words and the pictures, they work together, they go hand in hand, and collectively they create the message. So focusing on the next item, that is draws on understanding of local knowledge and practices. So when we say that, we actually mean paying attention to beliefs, practices, and expressions of the locals. And now you see, not only in the Western part of the world, almost in everywhere, even in my country, we have a practice of storytelling to children, especially during bedtime, right? So this local practice can be utilized. If we read this book and read this book to our children, then we don't not only entertain them, not only give them a story, we also teach them something, right? We also teach them that they should be respectful to people who look different, who talk different, right? Whose culture is different. So, and that's what we can teach them. And remember, before learning, we cannot teach. Without learning, we cannot teach something. So with the parents or the teachers who will be using this material, they will also develop a positive vibe and they will spread it among the children and the learners. And then focusing on informed by diverse approaches and experience. And when we say informed by diverse approaches and experience, we not necessarily mean the Western approaches and experiences. This book is a combination of theories and experiences. The way I see it, I'm just trying to give a review. The author knows better, the editor knows better, the supervisor knows better. I'm just giving a review, right? So this book is influenced by theories like we can say intercultural communicative development of intercultural communicative competence through literature. It was also influenced by ideas of sociosemiotics and values of multilingualism. But at the same time, this book is very much influenced by the experience of the author, right? The experience of the author. He belongs to Chile and he has first-hand experience of immigration issues. So you can always make your experience as a resource, not only focusing on theories and things like that. Okay, so, and then we can say benefits local communities. So without benefit, there is no credibility, right? So we need to, we can only say something to be credible when it produces real life impact and creates real life impact and produces real life benefits. So its multilingual approach benefits everyone. This book has 27 translations and we expect to get more. And yes, there are people who cannot read a certain language, but they can understand it when they listen to that language. So we are also planning to create an audiobook. So this book will be available for everyone and its multicultural approach can benefit everyone by teaching them how to build intercultural communicative competence and how to respect people who talk different, look different, and also serve as a resource for the EFL classrooms. And then moving on to the next agenda, leads the field or discipline and contributes to the larger global theories. So by that we mean there is no one way of doing things, right? So this book, yes, it is influenced by the theories of developing intercultural communicative competence through literature and things like that, but it also addresses a newer field of applied linguistics, which is translanguaging, right? Which is translanguaging, and I want to say that translanguaging, being a newer field of applied linguistics, still needs more pedagogical resources and contributions. And this book can serve as a resource of the new field of applied linguistics that we call translanguaging. And finally, we have ethical. And when we say ethical, we not only mean just signing a consent form, we mean to be responsible and to respectful. And this book, it does not harm anyone. It does not defame anyone or any community or anything. It just develops a positive attitude among children, among everyone, and spreads brotherhood and encourages us in the exchange of in linguistic and cultural exchanges, and empowers our community in that way. So that's all I wanted to say. I think it is a wonderful book. It fulfills all the features, all the essentials of a credible approach, and that's why it can be called a credible project. So that's all I wanted to share. If you have any more queries, you have my email address and you can ask about it later. So thank you. That's all I wanted to say. I don't know whether I bored you, whether I talk too much or not. So yeah, that's all from my part. And at this point, we would like to hear a few words from our technical in charge, which is Michel Needham. He did an excellent job. He was the software developer of this book. So Mitch, would you like to introduce yourself and share your experience with us? Mitch, the floor is yours. Are you there? We'd like to hear a few words from Michel Needham if you're available.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hello?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Hey, I'm Michel Needham. I am a student at Melbourne Uni and was given this opportunity by Sami and Amar Nabib, which was really a great honor. So I haven't had many experiences with big projects like this, especially with a lot of people. So it's been a lot of fun working with everyone, and there's been a lot of there's been a lot of unexpected challenges, I think. And Sami and Amar have been supportive and really great with communication, and it's been really great to work with them. And I've also talked to quite a few people who've done translating, and they've also been just amazing to work with. So I want to thank Sammy and Nama for having me on this project, and I'll continue to obviously work on this project with new languages or whatever else, whatever help is needed. But yeah, it was a great project, and I wish it all the best. All right, that's from me.
Thank you. Thank you, Michel. And yes, we also hope to get you in our future projects. You did a wonderful job. Thank you from FLC family. So at this point, we would like to hear a few words from our project advisor, which is Leslie Barak, and she helped us a lot in this entire project. Leslie, the floor is yours.
Okay, let me, yeah, a lot of what I was going to say, I think both Yvonne and Sammy have said quite a bit of it, but I want to tie a couple of things together. I think it's particularly exciting to be launching the Ribbit-Ribbit Pond project on International Mother Tongue Day, because UNESCO's theme for this year is using technology for multilingual learning, challenges and opportunities. And Mitchell just talked about, he said challenges, which reminded me of that. But I think that the Ribbit-Ribbit Pond project is an extraordinary example of exactly what the UN is talking about how technology can be used to create and share, more importantly, share mother tongue materials for both teaching and learning. The project so far has been accomplished through, I don't know how many people, so many people, all of you here on Zoom, but many other individuals who couldn't be with us today, clearly. And it's certainly been a large online collaborative effort that has spanned many months, a year, I guess. And that couldn't have been done without technology. It couldn't have been done 5 years ago, certainly, or 10. And it's produced a wealth of written and video materials so far. And all of you put such hard work into that, into it, as well as put your hearts into it. So I think looking at the significance of the project, Sammy and has already talked about this a little bit, and Yvonne as well. Let's look at a little bit at what it's produced. First of all, Sammy told me a little while ago, it's got so far 27 languages, and that's in many parts of the world. And what impresses me more is that quite a number of those languages are not often formally studied, and with the videos not often written or not written at all. And further, Yvonne did a great job in talking about already the advice and suggestions that he's given us for teaching ideas, for EFL teaching, not just to Spanish speakers. I think his ideas could be used with probably EFL for most languages, from most languages. So I encourage you to read the unit that's up on the website if you haven't already done so, in addition to looking at his PowerPoint. And he pointed out that those translations are intended to be used or to be made into bilingual or multilingual materials, but they could be used for any language, from any language. So in my context, when I'm in Malaysia, they could be from any of the indigenous languages into Malay, or into Malay and English, as we've done with other books there. And as he pointed out, and Sammy mentioned, we can use translanguaging and use that to strengthen all of a child's languages, not just the one that they might be learning in school. And I think it's important to point out that we can compare, in comparing vocabulary, in comparing sounds and grammar and other aspects of language, it also, and particularly with vocabulary, it shows children that translations aren't perfect, that the sound correspondences between languages are not perfect either. Likewise, Yvonne's already talked about the aspect of the book that I think makes it unique, and Mona talks about this a little bit on the chat. Most bilingual books and teaching materials don't focus on anything but language, or maybe superficial culture like different cities or maps of London or something like that, you know, the Eiffel Tower. But the story itself is so much more focused on values and attitudes in teaching the communicative competence, the openness, curiosity, and respect that Yvonne mentioned. But it's not just respect for languages, it's respect for people, all people, our own cultures, as well as every other culture we interact with. And I think even in a monolingual version, this message would come out loud and clear and would be simple enough for young children, even if it's being just used in one language. But in addition to the materials for teaching children, I spent a career teaching teachers, and I think these materials should be used for either in-service, pre-service, everything. Every teacher should look at them in terms of demonstrating how to use multilingual materials, in terms of demonstrating how to teach translanguaging strategies, but also in how to use the mother tongue in teaching other languages. And I guess finally, I want to mention, and I was surprised that the UNESCO site that I looked at doesn't mention language preservation in this year's theme at all, or in any materials about it, or language revitalization. But I think the Ribbit-Ribbit Pond materials will greatly aid in the preservation or revitalization of endangered languages. Amar mentioned before we started the recording that there are 9 languages in his corporation. And I think, you know, even if they're not written, the videos can be used and any language can be included that way and then shared freely. So by participating in this project, everyone here has made an enormous contribution, not just to Mother Tongue Day, but much more importantly, to the children's materials for languages around the world. And I guess with that, I'll turn it back over to you because that's all I have to say. Thank you. Thank you. Mahalo from
Leslie.
Hawaii.
Hello. Thank you, Leslie, for your wonderful speech. It really motivated us, and we're really thankful to you for all the support that you have been giving us so far. So at this point, we would like to hear from the person who made it happen, the person who has magic in his words, my mentor, my Ustad, Associate Professor of the Department of Linguistics, University of Sydney, the founder of Free Linguistic Conference, the supervisor of this project, and the editor of the book, The Ribbit-Ribbit Pond, Professor Nomad, Sunny Boy Brumby, Amar Mahbub. So we'd like to hear a few words, not a few words, a lot of words from you, Dr. Mahbub.
Thank you so much, Sami, for that introduction, that nice introduction. Thank you, everybody. I don't want to name everybody because everybody needs to be thanked here. And there are going to be people who are not present here, not just because they weren't able to make it, but people who will join this project in the future with helping us with additional translations, as Sami was saying, and we've already started working on them to create some prototypes, our YouTube videos that can accompany the website. So we get another modality, as Sami was saying and Leslie was saying, that will also allow us to record material in languages that are not written or where people don't really have literacy in the language. So we can use it as an oral resource. And at the end of the day, language is primarily oral. Writing is a symbolic or a visual symbolic. So it's because sound itself is symbolic, but it's an audio oral symbolic. So writing is a visual symbolic system, which uses a different set of sensory systems altogether. And that's in a sense why Event's book, was able to capture images and words, right? So both of them are part of our visual way of making meaning. Now, why do I say about making meaning? And I want to stress this because when we talk about a Mother Tongue Day and we talk about the International Mother Tongue Day, and Leslie mentioned people are, of course, the key. It isn't the language, it's the people that we are really talking about, and we should always remember that. And when we look at people and when we look at humans, especially because that's who we are and where we focus our energies on, we realize that as people, as humans, we actually create meanings through multiple sensory systems constantly. They're integrated. It's all working constantly. All the sensory systems, the weather, the temperature, the air, there's, all of it. It just all works together to create the meaning. And of course, the interpretations. Now, what we manipulate in order to convey some of our meanings and create it are some of the visual symbols that are or oral symbols that we use. So the sounds and the images and the text and things like this. Now, once we move away from it, we realize we use these things in order to actually create an understanding of the world, to learn how to behave and engage in the world with not just other humans, but also with other beings, other living things, with things that are non-living, with rivers and lakes and seas, which are themselves not living, but they are, of course, life-giving. So we learn all of that through our engagement with creating meaning. So it's really about the ways in which we create meanings, language being just one of them, and mother tongue being extremely important and vital in all of it, but just being one of the factors. So we need to actually think about protection of not just the language, but the very ways in which people create their meanings and the ways in which they live their lives and understand the world. Because that is diversity in itself. And the homogenization of that diversity into making everybody accept the same knowledge, the same thing, doing the same things in the same way, started, is something that, homogenization doesn't work. It never has, and I doubt it will. Where I am around me, it's a beautiful forest because of the diversity. If it was only one kind of tree, it would still be nice, but it wouldn't be the same. It just wouldn't be the same. I wouldn't have all the variety of wildlife I have here if I didn't have the diversity of the plants and things here, right? So the diversity is actually of every kind and everything. So it isn't just language, but it's all of our socio-semiotics. Now, when we actually planned this event, Sami asked me if I would read a poem. And I told him, Sami, I don't think I will, because the focus has to be on the book, which it is. That is the whole event, and what we are doing here is about the book. But at the same time, as I've just said, we want to think around these issues, not just in terms of mother tongue, but in terms of socio-semiotics. So I will share a short poem that I wrote recently. It's called Inheritance. And let me share the screen here so you can read along as well. Here you go. Can you see it? I hope so.
Yes, we can.
All right, we go from my screen. Okay, it's here. Inheritance, noun, property, genes, traits, conditions, passed from one generation to next. Things, material or biological. Where, oh, where is my social inheritance, my ancestral practice of integrity and balance, my ancestral languages, my song, my dance, my ancestral respect of all life and lands. Life and lands handed down to new owners, retainers of greed, corruption, and power, manufacturers of new laws and norms, robbers of the subaltern of social inheritance. Social inheritance, one for all for one. A wealth that exists only in sharing. Once it's stolen, there is no returning. It is not a condition, trade, gene, or property. Right, of course, language obviously doesn't exist if it weren't shared. If we didn't share it, there wouldn't be that language. Meanings couldn't be created. Ideas, philosophies, ways of doing things couldn't be shared if there wasn't language and other social semiotics. It's the whole of the social semiotics that we need to protect and worry about, not only a component of it. An essential component, yet a component only. It is the whole thing that needs to be considered. The respect for other life that's eroding around the world. Even in remote indigenous communities, unfortunately, I have to say, right? It's eroding. It's all being taken over. It's shifting. It's very quick. and people are not ready for that kind of a change, and it creates a social destabilization, the effects of it, which we witness in many parts of the world. So in trying to tackle this, notice what we did. We did sharing. This whole project is about sharing. You know, universities, my own university, love grants. They love people to get money to do grants. Now, this project in 27 languages so far, high tech, beautifully done in terms of the images, everything. Yeah, it's not that it didn't cost. Of course, there's a cost. But notice the cost when it's shared becomes negligible. And once we share the costs, notice we can create things that are amazing beyond anything that we can create individually. The magic is in the sharing. When you share, things go farther. Whether it is a project like this, or I'll tell you whether it is food. When you're sharing food, the food will last longer and go farther. It's the sharing itself is the magic. And that seems to have disappeared, and it's disappearing fast when our languages move us into thinking around trading. They create terms like barter. Barter, how many languages have a word for barter indigenously? None. How can you have a concept barter when the word doesn't exist in these languages? Right? A concept doesn't exist, in a sense also suggests that the practices wouldn't be there. So the idea, the term, the concept itself brings in a whole set of semiotic possibilities that weren't available to the people in the past. Now, let me tell you something from this part of the world. Australia was crime-free, pre-European invasion. It's crime-free, amazing, no crime. Now, when the English came here, and there were other people who came here before then, but the English came with their Bible, and they converted everybody to Christianity. And with teaching them the Bible, guess what they taught them? They taught them the 7 deadly sins. They taught them the 7 deadly sins. They gave them the concept of greed. They gave them the concept of all these other things that are bad. But that concept, those terms don't exist in these languages. There's no concept of that thing. And we see the evidence of it because we borrow those terms into the indigenous languages. We borrow barter. We borrow money. We borrow religion. We borrow these words with these concepts. Now that is sociosemiotics that's captured within the Boli. So notice how Boli becomes an aspect of sociosemiotics, but not the only thing. But what it can affect is now that you have a concept of greed, then you will have greed because now you know it exists. Right? It's a fascinating sort of a thing. It's not a concept about, it's not going to linguistic determinism where I'm saying that language determines it. No. What language does, it creates the semiotic possibility or closes off a semiotic possibility. And the semiotic possibilities or potentials are realized within the context of where people are. And they may evolve in separately as well. So there is no saying that was no greed here ever. Perhaps there was, but there were mechanisms for dealing with it. All of this is part of the socio-semiotics, part of Boli, part of language, and part of trying to move beyond where have been. So not just that we have really done this project without additional funding, any of the things, but it's an example of how things can be done without money, right? Or with a minimal expenditure of money. So what instead do we need? We need our integrity, our honesty, our commitment, our willingness to do the work and taking the responsibility and fulfilling it, right? So if people hadn't promised to do the translations, but hadn't done them, this book would not have been, right? So I want to just sort of thank here and end here with thanking everybody for showing that respect and that commitment, not just to their own language, but to doing something that is in a sense decolonizing both publication and the internet, right? And as you're saying, letting us use the technology as a tool in order to do certain goods there's a lot of people using them for bad things. There's also a lot of people using them for good things. So let's join the forces where we can use these technologies that are afforded to us at this point and use them creatively in ways through sharing and building resources that help all of us. Thank you, everybody again for all your work.
Thank you, Professor Amar Mahbub, for your wonderful speech. We are all enthralled and we all enjoyed, and it really enlightened us. And it was one of the main attractions of today's program. So I think we're at the end of our today's program, and what is left is to give the vote of thanks, which I would very much like to deliver. So thank you everybody for joining us. Thank you everybody for making it happen. And special thanks to our project supervisor, Amar Mahbub, our project advisor, Leslie, our author, Ivan, our illustrator, Sasonko, our technical expert, Michel Needham, and all the translators, Mona Ji for the beautiful posters, and everyone who is watching and everybody who will be watching, reading, and using this book in their classroom or as a bedtime story for their children. We thank everybody, and also we thank Almighty for guiding us. And with the spirit of International Mother Language Day, with the spirit of the Ribbit-Ribbit Pond that we developed after this session, I'm Sami Chishti, I'm signing off, and I wish you all a very good day. Till then, take care. Bye.